the golf club. That was part of, started with Ron 17 years ago. Now he really does most of the projects for Ron in this area. Those of you familiar with it, he's been involved with a lot of really neat courses around here. And you got to start working originally with dyes.
Just during college,
During college.
chance meeting with Pete Dyes. I think a lot of guys had those chance meetings. Pete led to some work with his son Perry.
So here we go.
Thank you.
As Jeff said, the three pro architects up now. Well, now we're down to two. Ron's gone. Or excuse me,
Hey, Jim,
Lester's gone.
if you need to point at the screen somewhere,
Yeah.
would you move these over here, because we're over here in the cheap, we're
You're over
in
in
the
the cheap seats. You can't see over here.
And we always saw was his back. We didn't pay as much as them, but
My Mayday's over there.
I'm left-handed, Ron, so you're lucky. I'll be shooting for that. I'm not smart enough to use both hands.
you go use that other one over there.
First of all, Joe, thank you for having me here. I am one part of Force Design. As he said, I've been with Ron 17 years, actually tomorrow. And I'm kind of an Eastern PA guy. Grew up over in Lancaster County, and seem to find my way traveling the Turnpike quite often. We've had a number of projects. We've been very fortunate to work in the Philadelphia area. Love coming back, and look forward to continuing to come back here. When Joe and I originally were exchanging some emails, he said, what about talking about Lancaster? And I thought, well, we could. You guys are going to hear a lot about Lancaster. A lot of you guys know Lancaster already, and the fact that they're having the Women's Open this year coming up. Thought, well, it'd be a good topic. You guys are going to get enough of Lancaster. So I started thinking about what we could talk about. I talked to some superintendents recently, and I thought, well, that topic would be good, but maybe not enough interest for you guys, all the architectural interest you guys show. So I started thinking about when Ron and I look at a golf course, the first thing we want to think about is, okay, why is this golf course good, or what makes this golf course good for this particular hole? We have these, what we call, three elements. So I started thinking about how I can do the three elements, and I can take the three elements and apply them to Bowling Green, Lancaster, or some of the other places we work at. It's like, well, those guys know those places already. But the great thing about what Ron Force and I get to do, and I'm sure Kelly, Ron, and Lester, and Ed in here, is that, we get to find places that people don't know about, the hidden gems. Pennsylvania, you guys have the wars on golf club atlas, what's better, Pittsburgh, Philly, whatever. No. But what do they say? There's Alabama in between us and Pennsylvania. We've got a lot of really good golf courses
I'm glad you
in
admitted
the
it.
surrounding areas. So that's what I thought. Let's take three elements and apply those to some of the lesser known courses by lesser known architects. I really appreciate, Mark, that you were talking about Demeraux Emmett and his history of when he got started, but I even say I'll trump you with Alexander Finley, who was out there in Oklahoma hitting balls with Indians trying to promote the game. So there's a lot of great history in this area. So those three elements: strategy, variety, and naturalness. And even with these past presentations, you kept hearing that strategy. It's kind of the essence of the game, how it started. It's a sport. So a good golf course is one that tests the golfer's wit as well as his ball striking ability. Strategy requires a golfer to apply varying values to his successive shots on a golf hole. If a golfer risks a hazard on the tee shot, then he should be rewarded with an easier approach shot to the green. Strategy implies alternate routes from tee to the green. This means that the golf hole should be sufficiently wide to give players choices of direction or angle. The golfer may choose to hit around trouble, but he has a proportionately lesser chance at par if he does so. Bunkering and other hazards thus come into play for the bogey golfer as well as the scratch golfer. The beauty of the strategic design is that the bogey golfer can enjoy his round as much as the scratch golfer. Strategic courses engage one's mind and are forever enjoyable for golfers of every ability. And I know one thing that we always come up with is we're working through a master plan or a restoration plan, and we're standing on that tee, and you can start to see the better golfers getting a little uncomfortable with what we're planning on. One, okay, we got in our head. We already know that they're starting to think about how am I going to play that hole, or they're feeling uncomfortable because there's a certain way they play that hole, and we're going to impact the way they play that hole. Then we know we've sort of gotten in their head. Variety. Monotony is the antithesis of a well-designed golf course. A good course has as much variety as possible in the looks of the hole, the types of shot required, the hole's direction, and the lie of the ball on the terrain. God created the ground is infinitely more interesting than most of what man can make. Ideally, the sequence of par is broken up and each hole has its own distinct character. Furthermore, each green is unique and all the bunkers are distinct. And we see this more and more. Lie of the ball on the terrain, where we'll be standing in the middle of the fairway, a nice uneven fairway with some moraine topography that's been created by glacial, the glacial, receding glaciers and everything. We'll say, we don't like this fairway. Why not? Well, I don't get a level lie on it. Well, you know what? Maybe you shouldn't. You can't just have flat fairways and flat greens. There's got to be some interest in them. Thirdly, naturalness. Nothing on a golf course is done in a contrived or unnatural way until the bulldozers came around. It should always look as though nature had a part in the creation of its features. Obviously there's been a resurgence in golf course architecture, this whole model and this changing and going back to this natural lay of the land design, which I think is wonderful. But at the same time, there were even those golf courses built in that golden age that because of the way they built them, they still have a very natural look about them. It didn't just have to be these heavily eroded bunkers and things like that, but there were other ways of building features that look natural, and yet they are man-made. That's the key component. So if we were to take these three elements, excuse me, I actually lost my voice on Tuesday and Wednesday, so at least it's coming back a little bit. Three elements nicely represented in one hole. This is the fifth hole at Newport Country Club. A wonderful, wonderful golf hole. I mean, the stretch of holes, you basically cross over, and the holes that Tilly did across the road over there are simply phenomenal. But this hole emphasizes strategic design as well as natural, and what you can't see is this first bunker being cut in a slight rise coming through here. This bunker was added simply because after massive tree removal, there's kind of a bailout area. You can hit up in here, dry as can be, and have a fairly difficult but an easier shot coming in. But what this represents are the different angles that people can play. I think we forgot the trees, narrow fairways, the angles. The angles have been lost in so many great golf courses. But you can see different routes that one could play based on their abilities. Not as deep here, deeper here. The penalty is proportionate to the risk taken. That's another thing that's very important. But just a wonderful example. It's very strategic bunkering that comes into play. Take a greater risk, the green opens up to you on that shot coming in. You play away, now you have to contend with the other bunkers. Now, that's a very much a risk and reward type of strategy. But sometimes strategy can also just simply be what type of club or how long you want to hit the ball. You don't necessarily have to play to a hazard, but it could also just simply be how far in length to where you're comfortable hitting an approach shot into a green, creating some of that strategy or creating some of that tension in the design. Lancaster Country Club, just to touch on it briefly, a rather boring hole at one time. Lots of evergreens over here, and at one time there were even more evergreens over here, some beautiful willows. And so, we came in here and looked at this golf hole, and Flynn had a 26-year relationship with Lancaster Country Club, 1919 until his death. He did a lot of different things out there. He had done plans on this course. We could only find one plan for the third hole. We have an aerial photo where they at least just cut the holes in, but there were no bunkers. But that was actually after his death. So we found that plan, which shows kind of a mini great hazard kind of thing here, right in front of the green, 2 bunkers on the outside left. You saw with Devereaux Emmett, and we saw the stuff with Langford and stuff, the diagonal echelon. What a great way of creating strategic interest, that diagonal. One bunker maybe not so deep, much deeper over here, just like we saw at Newport. So we had this plan and said, well, let's go ahead and implement this. And we did massive tree removal on left side, just a single pine remaining, much wider fairway. That fairway used to be through here. Reworking the bunkers at the green. We did not add the second bunker because that bunker's about 3.5 feet deep, and every bit of that was limestone rock. Lancaster County area, or how dense limestone is. We just were not going to put that second one in. And in all honesty, this was really just added. The single was needed to eliminate a bailout area. So kind of hitting on some of these principles of strategy. Strategy in a par 3. This is the tiny tin that Tilling has wrote about. The very short hole is one which was reconstructed at Bedford. Actually, you see those mounds in the distance right there. And there, those go back to 1895. The Bedford Springs Resort was actually open from 1895 till we closed for construction in 2006. Just before that, 2005, continuous play. They had a pro out of Baltimore, Tillinghast came in the teens. He did, actually, strangely enough, he went from 18 to 9 holes. Then Ross came in the early 20s and they went back to 18, some new holes. But here's his little sporting hole. This is the 2 flags. Here's the strategy. The 2 flags may appear confusing, but of course only one of them is to be found on any occasion. But the bean-shaped green is in 2 sections divided by a gentle undulation. So he incorporates some strategy in terms of how you're going to play the par 3 by that little gentle undulation. So you have a postcard of how it was built there in the 30s, postcard from the 30s. That's how we found it. Mike, that's probably what you remember playing, And, the place was pretty beat up. And, they had a new owner come in, the owner, they put $120 million in. He had his little Alps off to the side, that little center ridge right through there. Those grasses were protected during construction, but it's nice to see that strategy is not always just about the carry off of the tee or risk and reward, but it's even strategy on how you want to play a par 3, where you want to, position that ball, position the ball. Back to Lancaster again. Sometimes we can ruin strategy and interest with beautiful trees. Nice sycamore tree here. The comment we always had, we told them, that tree needs to come down. Hole's going to get easier. Hole's going to get easier. We hear that a lot. Well, if we expand the greens or we take trees out, the hole's going to get easier. But one thing they were missing, first of all, if somebody did pull a shot or hit it into here, it just dropped down, didn't go into Stout and run, or if a hole was cut here on the left side, guys were always playing to the right because of the tree. So now you take the tree down, now you can cut hole locations along this left side. You can take more bold, strategic play by going closer to the stream. Well, there's greater penalty in that. Here's one, maybe, Mike, I know you were talking about Northampton Country Club a couple years ago on Golf Club Atlas. Northampton Country Club, Robert White, another architect that we don't pay a lot of attention to. It's not sexy to talk about. We have a Robert White golf course. Well, founding member of the PGA, founding member of ASGCA, founding member of the Golf Course Superintendents Association, one of the first golf course architects to also get involved with managing clubs through maintenance and through managing them together as a facility in the Westchester, New York area. So Robert White had a lot to do, and he built golf courses, had a lot to do with architecture early on, and really in a lot of the organizations that exist to this day. And from a strategic standpoint, he had this nice par 5. These 2 bunkers come into play off of the tee. He had some, what we would call 4 bunkers here, but we were not allowed to put them back in here at Northampton. But this is one thing I think we missed too. Okay, a longer hitter, even now or in the days of no irrigation, can get a ball up into here, no problem. These bunkers really meant nothing. But I think one thing that we forget about, and oftentimes a lot of people say, you're only designing for the better golfers. You know what? There's nothing wrong with, on an occasional hole, high handicaps, even the women, to have a challenge. Give them something to hit over. Why not? Why not just challenge them every once in a while? They have the option of playing over or playing short of it. These bunkers aren't that deep. So I use this as an example to show that, we do get caught into this sometimes, only designing for better players. Everybody always there's that cliche saying we design golf courses for all levels of players. Yet, I think oftentimes we don't. I actually think we forget about another level of players in this business, and I think sometimes they should be challenged from time to time. You don't want to go 8, 10 rounds with a heavyweight boxer, but you know what? There's nothing wrong with throwing some hazards at them every once in a while. Secondly, the position of a bunker well short of a green, by challenging a guy who does not hit a good tee ball, he now has to contend with this on his second shot. So you've got challenge and interest on first and second shots. The other thing is, up here, sometimes taking out a bunker could provide greater challenge than just eliminating them. Joe Pantelli, the superintendent in Indian Creek, plays the 13th hole down there. You got to know the wraps around the water. He always aims for the bunker because he knows he can get up and down. He's going to get a good lie. So here's a guy that's basically not driving the green. He's driving it right into a bunker, gets a good lie, flips it up. He knows he can get up and down, walks away for birdie. Kind of cheapens the game. Nothing wrong with taking a bunker out on occasion. So this is that same hole being implemented, and unfortunately, that dirt spot right there is supposed to be that bunker right in here. we lost the battle. But we lost the battle, but we won the war. We had to move the bunker out a little bit further, just so they had more room to get through there for the senior ladies, for the shorter hitting golfers. But in the end, we're still happy with the composition of the hole. It still has the strategic elements we were looking for. Great hole here in the Philly area, Northampton, yeah. Manny's. These bunkers were never an issue when there were two huge oak trees to the right where the equipment is right now. And wonderful lay of the land, very strategic, very natural, and it's in everything out here on this golf hole. But there were two trees in here. You can see the fairway's going to get kicked out. These bunkers used to be an afterthought. And so, you know, you can play close to the bunkers and the green opens up at that angle. If you're a big hitter and can get it out over these bunkers, you've got this nice little crown right in through here, but the green really opens up. You shorten that carry over that wonderful quarry there. Here's a Flynn golf course that no one really talks about, other than the fact that they hate the 14th hole, which is no longer Flynn, but this is Concord Country Club. And I really think, you know, Concord's gone through a couple changes recently. They have a new superintendent in there, a young guy. Greg D'Antonio's his name, interestingly enough. His uncle was one of the guys that would do some construction work in Marion and Pine Valley, I believe. But the Italian guy doing a lot of stone work and doing construction on the course. But this is their fifth hole, which originally had a stream cutting down through here, and of course they, like many clubs, they piped it over. I'm sorry for the quality of the photos in the middle of winter. And so recently they've just gone in and they've opened up that strategic line. Now you've kind of got that line of charm people talk about. The closer you play to the stream, the shorter your shot is coming in, and the better angles you have at the green. But really some great things going on over at Concord, and just some interesting Flynn stuff that doesn't look like some of the rest of this golf course. Here's their split, and now their 16th hole at Concord. You know, he did a great hazard, and our desire is to put that back in. And so we're working with the club to do that, to reintroduce that strategic element. I mean, this is kind of it's an either or. Either you're going to lay up short or you're going to try and carry that. And we're working through on the positioning on where that should be and how it impacts every level of players. So just another strategic element. This would be their current 16th. After their 16th hole, the green right now sits more back in here. Here's number 1, here's 12 coming up. 17 would be coming up from this area. So, touch on strategy, a little bit on variety. This is an aerial photo from about 2010 from the Country Club of Buffalo, Donald Ross Golf Course. And the reason I showed this aerial is if you go through this and you count it, there would actually be 13 of 18 holes bunkered left and right. Left, right at the green. Left, right. No variety. And then they've got some par 3, which, you know, you're not left, right. But it's that old, you know, it was in the early 2000s. I was walking to Oak Hill East. And before I went out there, Paul Jr. was working there at that time. He gave me a book. And that book had a layout of the Donald Ross Golf Course and an overlay of the current golf course. And when I was walking the golf course, it was really disappointing. Everybody talks about how great Oak Hill East is, and then you look at each page and you think, wow, that's what Ross had here. You know, when Jones came in there in the 50s to work on that for the Open, and all of a sudden we just eliminated the ground game and we just closed everything off. So everything became the aerial game. You know, Wilson was, really promoted the aerial game, and he did it so well and had such great variety. It just wasn't closing off the fronts of every green. And that's what was happening. You see this a lot carried through today. So 13 of 18 greens at Country Club Buffalo all were basically bunkered left, bunker right, and there was not a single 4 bunker, 80 to 100 yards off the tees. So here's the old Ross aerial photo taken 1 year after opening, and if you went through and you counted this, you'd see that there's actually only 8 of 18 holes that were bunkered left and right at the green. So commissioned with, and there's so many different strategic elements out here too, and great topography for the Buffalo area. So you come back in, and then with just about a year ago, and the wonderful thing about the strategies here, and the naturalness and the variety, are the number of 4 bunkers here. Number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, number 8, number 9, number 10, and then we got to jump over 13, 14, 15, 17, all have 4 bunkers. And I think it's the one element in variety and strategy that a lot of clubs don't want to do. They don't want to put those bunkers back in off of the tee. But if you go through and you're looking at this properly and you position your new forward tees or position your white tees properly, I think it's very important that clubs should reinstate these 4 bunkers. If you take a ground level photo of some of these and you see the 4 bunkers there and then you kind of use your hand and cover them up, you realize that you're missing something. And I just think it's a nice, it's not necessarily strategic, but it lends variety, it lends some action.
The 4 bunkers are what some is called pop shots.
Pop shots, what Tillingham used to call them Duffer's headaches, so you take a punch out, it's fun to put some back in. I talk about this, we're talking about variety, and I call this, variations on a theme. 12th hole at Pine Valley, right in through here, okay? Flynn did a lot of work over there. Well, then you get the 10th at Marion, you get the 1st at Philly, and you get the 16th at Lancaster. Now, this one was originally designed with the green over here, but we used these as inspiration to do this work. I remember I was with Tom Ball, we were standing right out over here for the amateur when they were playing there. I think it was Molinari had a shot, and we're standing right next to him, this caddy here, right here. They were going through 4 different shot options that they had to play. The pin was on the left side over here. 4 different shot options. And so it's such a short hole, Philly country, the key component is that it looks like the green's coming at you in the position of a high point, it's going away from you. So you can be right out in here and think you got an easy shot, but you've got all these different shot options. How am I going to play it? Flop it, flop it, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? So variations on a theme. These guys were so good back then that they could repeat these themes over and over again, but have just smaller, different elements or different elevation. I mean, you can throw, I think it's the 5th at Huntington Valley in here, you can throw the 7th at Cherry Hills in here, you can throw, we talked earlier about the 5th at Rolling Green. Very simple hole, play to the outside, but that green is it's perplexing. And you think it's a simple shot coming in. All of that Flynn, I truly believe he got it right off of that right there, 12th at Pine Valley. Variety again. This is back to the Country Club of Buffalo. We talk about variety in terms of how holes are routed. Each par 3 here is routed in a different direction, different topography. You've got the 4 bunkers here on 8. You've got this wonderful, that's 25 feet high, just this big old quarry. Another quarry wall here for the 12th, and then just a rise for the 16th. Ross just did a phenomenal job there in terms of variety, in terms of shot selection, impact of wind. That's the one thing people forget. As soon as you start cutting down trees, you start feeling the wind and how the hole was originally designed and its impact. Variety. Omni Bedford Springs Resort. Ross had no bunkers at the green, but check out these earthworks. Okay,
Yeah.
These were original to the course. We just rebuilt them and expanded things a little bit. That's what was there. So there's many different forms of variety. First at Rolling Green, who needs a bunker where you can just roll off on that right side? Guy's not going to aim for the hole now or for the bunker to get a good lie because there's nothing there. That can be more perplexing and it lends variety. And yet, we go back to that variation on a theme. 8th at Lancaster, 3rd at Rolling Green, 4th at Manny's, 13th at Manny's. I can throw up the 6th at Rolling Green. I can throw up the 7th at Philly. I can throw up the 10th at, Rolling Green, if you think about it, every one of the R3s, like we were talking about that. Flynn, he would cut these greens in on these hills. It's not so much of a hill here, but cut these in on a hill. Big bunker on the high side, high side, high side, high side, and 1 or 2 bunkers on the low side. You could throw the 10th up here at Rolling Green. Variations on a theme. They repeated the same thing over and over, but they changed it up enough that you can really can't tell. Flynn, if he designed his greens, he had 3 high points oftentimes. He kind of rotated them around on a dial and just sit there. It might be on one, it might be 12, 3, and 9, and the next one it might be 1, 5, and 10. He just kept moving them around and their influence. Maybe they were inside the green where the green rolled off. Maybe they were outside and it provided a bank. So these guys just had great variety back then. This is Robert White at Northampton Country Club. And again, some people say he got his needle stuck when he was doing the work. But there's enough variety in there. You know, he pulled up the corners of the greens. High point here, high point there. Like this, you were interested in that photo of the 7th hole there. That's a cool green putting that for a hanging museum photo. High point there, high point there. High point over here with the ridge, high point there. 8th hole, high point there, high point there. He repeated himself all over. He did some work at Skytop Lodge, similar scenario. But he changed it up, the angles of the green, the bunker configuration, they're all different, which changes things up. And a wonderful golf course, you know, Northampton is kind of, you know, one of the ugly stepchildren up there. You've got Saughton Valley, you've got everybody talks about Leeheim, but this is a good golf course. It's a solid golf course. It's fun. I enjoy playing there day in and day out. Naturalness. You know, we're starting to look at some of the work at Lancaster Highland. You know, and this is unfortunately what happened. You know, basically you shape everything in sight and call it natural, and create, you know, get the dozer going. We create natural golf courses. Well, they basically moved heaven and earth to get that done. Moved everything within your eyesight to get it done. Natural. Alexander Friedman. If I could have, you know, see, there's a flag right there. These are big, bold features. I mean, I'm 6'3". Some of these would be over my head. So when we start talking about naturalness, you got to think about scale. These things have to be big. If these things were smaller, which literally we almost lost his job. This was Ron Forst's second classic golf course that he did some work on in the late 80s. They wanted to come back and they wanted to do some work. Where? Lebanon Country Club, Lebanon, PA. Alexander Finley. And we had to interview him. And I had done the work at Tavistock, which went over very well. And they came back and they said, well, we don't like the work that was done here basically 20 years ago. We kind of had to say to them, we learned something in 20 years. And so, but it was because the features were too small. They didn't like the scale of them. So we, fortunately enough, we're back in there. And it's not because we're working there, but it's because they had these models laying around the golf course. And we can see in the old photos how big some of these features were. And they work on that particular property. So as you're playing the hole, those are big, beautiful features. You know, shouldn't be afraid to do those things today, but yet they don't look like a dozer. And I think that's the biggest thing, is getting in there and being able to shape this stuff in there, and not always doing it with a dozer. As soon as you get in there with a dozer, it's just going to round stuff off. Which hole is it? That's the 16th hole. And one of the issues that they had in terms of, you know, talking about all of these three elements and stuff, you know, one thing we talk about here too is safety. So here is the 16th hole, 17 is here, basically here's the 17, and all these beautiful trees. And, you know, trees, some people would consider trees to be a hazard. The Scots call them bunkers in the sky. You know, the only thing that is going to stop is a straight shot right through here. Anything in the air, well, the narrowest part of the tree is at the top. And they were having safety issues. So just by pulling off the examples we saw around this green and thinking you got to be big and bold, you know, we came in with some double duty bunkers, you know, talking about Deborah Emmett, some of those double duty bunkers. But just getting in there and getting big and bold and making these features, you know, Ron Forst and I were talking about this, because basically you got to make it look like Pennsylvania mountains. And if you drive the turnpike, you know, that's kind of where you got to get some of this inspiration from. But they fit. They fit in on this flat ground, and they're nice and they're big and they're bold. And all it was capturing some stuff that Finley had done elsewhere, and kind of landing on. Here's Bryn Mawr. You know, natural. We talk about scale, and the photos are kind of small, but you know, you just see these little cat eyes of sand in through there. Yeah, it's a flat property, and a flat property is very difficult to see things. But again, if you increase your scale and you start to see more on the land, it's better. You know, one of the great things about Saucon Gray School that the Gordons did is that it was very big. You know, things weren't very detailed, they were big, broad, and they lifted it up so you could see things. If they did things at a smaller scale, you wouldn't see them. It just wouldn't fit that particular property in Saucon because it didn't have the elevation change that old and Wayno had. back over to Manny's again. And just, we're talking about naturalness, just the wonderful horizon line carries across. As you're looking at this hole, your eye starts over here in the quarry, and it's uninterrupted, and it's just beautiful, broad and long. And we kind of lose that art. I think by today's standards, the Dokes, Crenshaw, and Gill, that's the one thing that they really picked up on. They'll take a bunker and it'll tie out 50, 80 feet away from the bunker or from the green. And it really is just picking up on that natural elevation. Flynn's use of the land, 14th hole here, cutting the bunker into the hillside and yet using the upper slopes to cut them in. This hole too sort of epitomizes that strategy, naturalist, and variety, in that as you play into the green, and there's a number of Philly area courses like this where Flynn has that bunker short of the green, but a cant and a slope coming in, drop the ball over that bunker, let it run into the green, get these front left hole locations. Yet if you play away, or if you play down into here and try and get in there, you're kind of crossing over these things, or coming in over those bunkers. So there's a lot of different angles, a lot of variety in there. And I kind of finish with this. This is a course up in Wisconsin, and the question always was, is this more expensive to maintain, or is that more expensive to maintain? And the reality was, that was more expensive to maintain. And I think that's one thing that's gone wrong with golf is people's expectations. And this obviously is not in any way natural at all. Whereas this gives you a more natural look. The thing that happened with this particular golf course is, with the run and look, members' expectations dropped. They didn't expect things to be immaculate and pure and clean all the time. They were okay with it. So, that's kind of the three elements. And I know, we're not talking about it today. The topics have been the hot button issue or hot topic here in the industry in general. How do we grow the game? Well, I think this is the faction of individuals where we grow the game. We've got the women coming to Lancaster Country Club this year, and we have the women coming to women amateurs coming to Bowling Green next year. Now, that's one part of the industry where we need to grow the game, is the women, and get them involved, and get our daughters involved, get our children involved, and go support tournaments like this. I mean, Lancaster, to date, they're basically selling out. It's going to be one of the quickest women's opens, one of the most well-attended women's open. But it'd be nice to see it at Bowling Green. What a venue to, I'm not saying that just because when I sit here, but what a venue to go see some of the best women amateurs play golf at Bowling Green. It's just a phenomenal venue. So with that, those are our three elements, and how we see a golf course and what we look for. So any questions?
I have a point to make. This is kind of a point to ponder, and I don't know whether who in this room would be aware of this. But
This
we
could
talk
really
about
be dangerous.
variety.
Yeah.
I think we often agree that architects have been designing and building greens, say, of all different shapes and sizes, ever. About 20 yards out.
I think that was still a rule 62.
Any other questions?
Change.
Yes, Mark.
Yeah, I really enjoyed seeing these less familiar courses, and I was wondering, if you could choose just a few thin leaves and a few lights, what would you recommend?
Well, if you get out to Pittsburgh, the Longview Club, the interesting thing about Robert White is he did the prototypical golf holes. There's a reverse Redan, there's an Eden. He did double plateaus on his greens. He does punch bowls. The Longview Club, if you're a golf architecture enthusiast, it's worth seeing. And if you're a building architecture enthusiast, because in all honesty, I think the Longview Club's clubhouse is probably one of the most beautiful clubhouses, if not in the state, in the Northeast. So I would see that. And I just think it has better topography than Northampton Skytop Lodge. You also did some work at. In terms of Findlay, in all honesty, guys, just go over the wall with me. Not because we worked there, basically because we just restored what was there, is Tavistock. I think Tavistock's greens, you have great golfers. Jamie Slonis, Tom Cremigna, these guys are, what's that? Oh, Nash, McGinnis, Billy McGinnis. These guys have competed on a national level, and they love that golf course. The greens there are phenomenal. I would pick that course up and put it in Philly, and I think it would immediately shoot up because of its greens. It's been monkeying with a little bit because of 295 cutting through, but I think they still have some solid golf holes over there. And so I would definitely check that out. But I'm supposed to go check out Galen Hall.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna